I'm going to start by commanding you to do something. Are you ready? I'm about to do a talk here. So humans, engage. Did that work? Did it work? Is everyone engaged now? So I want to talk about what it actually looks like to have engagement and what it is that we in the Agile community, but also our leaders, can do to help increase that engagement and why. My caveat to you as my friends is I actually built this as a keynote for communities that were adjacent to the Agile world. So I am going to verbally tie this back to some of our principles. I encourage you to do the same. So if you're listening to something and you're like, ooh, that sounds like Agile principle number X, throw it into the chat. I hope it's okay with you if I kind of share something that's maybe a little bit adjacent and not a typical Agile talk. It definitely applies to us. So first thing I want you to do is think about the best job that you ever had. And I really want you to, in a minute, I'm going to shut up for like 20 seconds and let you think about that. And when you do, I want you to think of the key words that come to mind. So when you start thinking about that job, what are the things that made it so cool that it was the first thing that came to mind for you when I asked the question? So let's see some of the words here. New challenge, diversity of views, leadership, happy team, wear many hats, collaborative. I think y'all are missing something. I don't see anybody who said because the engagement survey was low and they made us increase it. I mean, nobody said that. Keep going, but I'm going to tell you about mine. And I'll also encourage you, as I go through this, that if you hear me saying keywords and phrases, feel free to throw those into the chat as well. So I'm going to describe the job and the experience that shaped my career. And I think when you hear some of these things, you'll go, oh, that's why she became an Agilist. So when I was 20 years old, I got a call from a recruiter. I was in college. I was still in bed at 10 a.m. And the recruiter said, can you be at this place, the scooter store, by noon? I was a temp, to be clear. So it was not uncommon for them to call and say, can you be here by this time? And they said the scooter store. And I was thinking like, you know, the kids' Razor scooters. I am so much older than retail. Don't you know I'm 20 and I don't work in retail anymore? This is the 20-year-old's mindset. No, this is medical equipment. And I had no idea that that one phone call was literally going to change the trajectory of my entire life and my career. So I went as a temp at 20 years old as a receptionist and ended up working there for a total of 12 years until I was 32. And if you think about that time span in your life, that's a pretty transformative and, you know, building time of your life. This company was so far ahead of its time. We were very, very autonomous in our teams. We continually iterated on things. Ooh, this is sounding familiar. We had a lot of trust from leadership. We had relationships. When I started working at the company, I think I was number 600 as a full-time employee. And by the time I left, we had topped 2,200. And we still had relationships with the CEO, the executives. I'll share as sort of an aside, when I went on to work at Scrum Alliance as the co-CEO, I actually reached back to the CEO of the scooter store and said, I want to build what you built for us. And he became a bit of a LinkedIn message mentor for me. But he was very focused on the things that made really strong teams and on the importance of communication between not only leadership and the teams, but the teams and leadership. The things that he taught me were that what was important wasn't just the one-way communication in either direction, but the relationship that existed between the two. And, you know, after having done it myself with roughly 50 people, I cannot concept like how he was able to do that with 2,200 people, but he did. Enough so that there is a Facebook group of alumni from the scooter store. Unfortunately, the company went out of business for unrelated reasons, I believe in 2016, and 6 years later, we still have an alumni group of about 1,600 people who stay in touch with one another, who care about one another, who talk about, hey, this company I'm working at is like doing the thing that we did. I was raised on Lencioni. I was raised on Vern Harnish. I was raised on Stephen Covey. And all of this set my expectations so incredibly high. I felt incredibly valued as a human being. I knew that if I had something to say, that I would be heard, maybe not always by the CEO, but certainly by my manager and their boss. I actually saw things change when I brought suggestions to the table. And so I was part of the idea of Scrum coming to the scooter store. I was not my original idea, but my boss came to me. He's like, we are releasing once a month. Right before we release, we prioritize the next month's work and we talk with our stakeholders. And at the end, we show it to them. And I heard about this thing called Scrum, and I think we might be doing it. And so I went out and learned as much as I could about it. I brought it back and it became part of the fabric of our IT department at the scooter store. So I had the privilege of seeing things that I cared about become part of the fabric of the company. And so, as you can imagine, I was quite engaged and engaged enough that I did leave once, probably about 6 years into it, and I was only gone for a quarter because the company that I went to reminded me that not every company cared about culture the way that the scooter store did. And I went back for another 6 years. So that is the job and the experience that shaped my career. Let's fast forward to roughly 2020. I'm going to guess most of you have heard this phrase, the Great Resignation. Some of us have been calling it the Great Reckoning, the Great Revelation, the Great Reevaluation. But these are all actual headlines from different articles that I found talking about the Great Resignation. I read revolution on the screen. And the funny thing is, a lot of people seem like confused by this. And I think many of us Agilists are kind of sitting back and going, yep, the pandemic brought to fruition what we've been telling you for quite some time. And we're all sort of cheering on the people that are standing up and saying, I want a human-centric workplace. I want fair, wages and fair hours. I want to be valued as a human being. And so we do have a really big opportunity here. And I know a lot of Agilists have seen this, have people call on them, to help. Now, this number has changed on and off over the years. So this is the most recent number that I could find. The Gallup State of the Workplace in 2021 says that 80% of people are disengaged with their work. 80%, like, I don't know. That is mind-blowing to me because people go to work every day and you may not even know how disengaged that they are. Interestingly, though, the same report says that highly engaged workforces outperform competitors by 147% in earnings per share. So this number matters so much that it takes up my entire slide. But it doesn't just matter to money, right? It matters to us as people. It matters to the work that we do. It matters to the future of the company, and it matters to just who we are as human beings. When I think about this, there's like two different ways I imagine these folks who are disengaged. Sometimes it comes out as angry, right? When you go in and you're working with a team that's, trying to become more agile, and there's their guy that's sort of upset about every change or everything that we're doing. Not only is he upset about the change, but like that's disengagement sort of going down further and further and further. Or you've got the, quite upset and sad and like, I don't know what to do next. So this term employee engagement is thrown around all the time. And I was actually quite, I'm trying to think of the right word for this. I wanted to be very careful about using this word and making sure that I knew what it meant to me and that I knew what it would mean to other people. And so I went out and got some quotes, and the quotes kind of surprised me a little bit. So here are some of the quotes around employee engagement and how these different sources are defining employee engagement. And for me, most of them are kind of centering the company, right? Which makes sense. I understand that, we're here to do a job. The company needs to make money to continue. But if we're constantly saying, humans, you need to engage, but when we talk about engagement, it's actually about the company, then I think we're sort of missing a point here, right? We're missing the boat on what that means. Give me one more second to read these. I don't want to read any of them out loud because there's a lot. But I think it's important for us to understand where this idea is coming from of engagement. So here is what I want to propose. Employee engagement is actually not about engagement with the company or the work, but rather employee engagement is about a human's engagement with a relationship. That might be their engagement and their relationship with the leader, with the company, with the work, or maybe all of those things. But in order to have a relationship, this is a two-way street. So the company can't just say, here's your work, engage with it. Here's your leader, engage with them. Here's the company, engage with it. When we are whole human beings, that we have needs, we have desires, we have growth. And this has to be more than just, here's your career development plan that one day you can too get promoted. People actually want more than that in their lives, based on the people that I have had the fortune to talk to. I would even venture to say that we need to be talking more about employee experience. And that if we are more concerned with employee experience, while still focusing on, again, the goals of the company and meeting them in the middle, that's more important than talking about employee engagement. Because employee experience is multifaceted. It is not about having a cool office, as we've learned in the last couple of years. It's not about ping pong tables. It is about who am I as a person and how do I make my way through the world at this company. So it is about your role, your work, and your life. And how do all three of those things play a part in how I show up at work and how work shows up with me. The world wants more. And, as someone who's been in a number of leadership roles, if I hear that and I say, but I feel like I'm doing everything I can. I care about my people. I tell them to take PTO when they need it. I tell them we have unlimited PTO. But it has to be more than that if you actually want them to bring their whole self and see themselves in the work and engage in a relationship. All right, my mouse is playing tricks on me today. So I would say leaders need to stop trying to engage their employees with their work. Stop going, humans, engage. My survey was down. Bring it up again. Instead, the leaders too need to engage with their relationship. So what I'm about to share with you over the next few slides is a model. It is new. You are only the second folks who have seen this model. But it talks about the different things that we need to bring to the table together and some of the questions that employees might have to help deepen this relationship between teams and leaders so that they can meet in the middle. So you'll see I mentioned role, work, and life. I am grounding each one of the pieces of this pyramid in those three contexts. So when I come to work and I want to engage, I do believe that most people are doing the best that they can. They want to do well. Like I heard this phrase once that your kids don't wake up in the morning and want to make your life miserable. And I feel the same way about everyone. Like none of us get up in the morning and want to be annoying or frustrating. People want to do well at work, but there are certain things that they need. And there are questions that they might be asking related to that. So we're going to start with clarity. As we make our way up the pyramid, I just spoiled it, there's a pyramid. As we make our way up the pyramid, I'm looking at this as the things that might be the most accessible at the bottom, and also that the things above them build on the things below. But I thought a lot about accessibility because there are some things that the leader's hands are constrained on as well, right? That the leader can't give more of X. So starting with clarity, people want to know, as it pertains to their role, what are the boundaries of my role? And I am not talking about stay in your lane. I am talking about how far can I go in my role? How far can I help? How far can I bring ideas? And also, what happens if I push those boundaries? And what if we had those types of conversations up front? How much more would that deepen a relationship between a leader and a person on a team, or all the members of a team? As it pertains to work, what is the work ahead of me for, I put X period of time because that, definitely can be contextual based on the company. But I want clarity of the work ahead of me, maybe just for the next 2 weeks. But also, what will happen if our priorities change? So again, we're Agilists. We're acknowledging that you can't have 100% clarity. But if they have clarity about what's going to happen if things change, it's less scary. As it pertains to my life, are the boundaries of my work and my life clear? We are the same whole person at home and at work. So on one hand, I am a proponent of work-life integration to a certain point because we're the same human being. However, I also want to know that at 5 o'clock at the end of my agreed upon day, I can turn it off and go roller skating, and you're not upset with me that I'm not responding to Slack messages. Or I can go to my daughter's recital, and when you told me, yes, go to your daughter's recital, of course, we care about you. We want you to be there for your family, but you're messaging me while I'm at her recital, it's sending me a different message. So I want clarity about the boundaries between my work and my life. Do you clearly care about my life as demonstrated through actions and not just words? Some of the examples that I just gave, right? You can say all day long, I care about you, but if you're not following that up with action and you're not respecting those boundaries, then it's not just that it's frustrating, it's that people don't have clarity. Well, what are the boundaries then? Like if you're not respecting them, then I now am unsure of what they are. In terms of Agile principles, this one sort of brings me back to my pet principle is number 8, which is I rephrase it often as exhaustion is not a status symbol, but the idea that, rest is important. And this one kind of comes back to that for me. Like, do I have clarity that I can take that time, or is it pushed every time? Next is context. Especially when we're working with teams that are going to become more self-organizing, we tend to sort of like throw them in the deep end of the pool and like, okay, great, you're going to make decisions now. And I'm going to confess, when I was a leader, I was guilty of this. Like, I think I was trying to prove something. Oh no, I trust my team to self-organize. And I throw them in the deep end of the pool without the information that I had when I was making those decisions, and without the context that they might need to make those decisions within. And so that's one big thing, as specifically for Agilists, is we need to be really careful that if we're asking teams to make decisions, that they have the context for it. But generally speaking, how does my role contribute to my team? And how does my role contribute to the mission? Whenever I poll teams when I'm working with them and I say, do you understand the connection here? I can't tell you. I mean, if I had to guess, this is just a hypothesis in the moment, it might be that 80% of them don't understand that connection. Maybe that's where our engagement problem is. How does my work contribute to the org goals and objectives? And how does my work change the world? Like, there are some people who do just, there's nothing wrong with this, but like want to go to work and go back home because their passions are outside of work, and that's okay. But a lot of people I know, they want to make an impact. And a lot of them don't really understand how they are making a difference, especially if we're working with software teams who are often, several milestones or points away from the actual customer, which ties it back to let's get our teams, with real customer feedback, talking to customers. And then as it relates to my life and context, how does this job fit in the context of my life? Now we're talking about my personal growth, my professional growth. How does this job fit in the context? On the other side, how does my life fit in the context of this job? So again, that one kind of goes back to, do you understand that I have a life outside of this job? And are the two feeding each other and not somehow hurting each other or only going one way? Craft. So craft can be anything, right? Whatever it is that is your work passion and your craft that you are developing in, people are very concerned that they get to continue to develop in that craft. And if as leaders or as informal leaders on their teams, we can demonstrate that we care about their craft and them continuing to grow in it, that deepens our relationship with them. So with role, does my role allow me to develop in my craft? Pretty basic question. Does my role allow me to collaborate with others in my craft? One of the things I've seen with cross-functional teams firsthand is that it is extremely important that we have, some sort of, whether it's a community of practice or a guild or whatever you want to call it, we call them co-ops, an opportunity for people to connect with other people who do what they do at work if we're asking them to be on a team with other people who have different functions, which is awesome. Like there's so much goodness in that, but you also have to give them the ability to collaborate with others. As it relates to my work, am I working on projects and products that will teach me more about my craft? Am I working on products and projects that will allow me to demonstrate mastery? We think about Dan Pink and autonomy, mastery, purpose. I want to demonstrate that mastery. I want to feel good about it. And so if I'm working on something that, doesn't allow me to do that, then over time I become disengaged, and I become disengaged with my relationship with the leader or with the company. And then is my career trajectory clear as it relates to the enrichment of my life? Ooh, that one's kind of a lot of big words, but basically I'm saying, when I think about my big goals as a human being, not just my job goals, is this job flexible enough that if I wanted to, I don't know, move to California, work from the beach, because that would enrich my life and I would still really contribute to this team? Does this career trajectory take me there? Can I do that? And just simply, am I pursuing my passion? That might be at work or at home, but am I enabled to do that? Just two more. Choice. This one's big. And I remember that I said we're building up in terms of accessibility. And so when I say that, I mean, there are some org structures in which choice becomes increasingly difficult. And I love to see the ones who are willing to be flexible and change that. But I am acknowledging as you go further up this, that it might become harder to do. It takes more commitment from the company, from the leader, and in some ways from the teammates, because some of these things are scary to do. So for example, do I have a choice in the definition of my role? Not just what my title is, but remember those boundaries that we talked about? Do I have choice in that? Do I have the authority to make choices in accordance with my accountability? I cannot tell you how many times I have worked with employees who said, I have the accountability of this, but so many of the choices are outside of my control. And that is incredibly unfair. So do I have the authority to make choices in accordance with my accountability? As it pertains to work, can I choose the best solution to the problems that I see? Or do I have to have them approved by 6 other people? Can I choose the priority of my work? So this gets harder and harder. And it doesn't mean just one individual person. Sometimes that's in the context of the team. But do I have choice? Or is it just handed to me over and over? Here's what you're going to do this week. And then as it pertains to my life, do I have a choice about where and when I work? And do I have a choice about how I care for my body, my mind, and my spirit? If I need to take 30 minutes at 2 p.m., not at lunchtime, and perhaps do a meditation or go for a run, can I do that? Do I have that choice to take care of myself? And the more and more that I have choice, the more engaged I am with this relationship. And lastly, and maybe the most difficult one, co-creation. Can I co-create the future of my role? Can I co-create the future of the org from the position of my role? As it pertains to work, can I co-create the objectives of the organization? I will tell you how important this one is just very quickly. I was recently working with an org that had a number of layers of hierarchy. And hierarchy is not inherently bad, but what you see sometimes is, yeah, the leaders created these OKRs and they're not possible. And here's why. And this person could give like a very logical, rational reason why the objectives were just sort of slightly off of what was actually, realistic or reasonable. And it was because they were created at a leadership retreat with no input from anyone else. And it happens a lot. And I can empathize, honestly, with those leaders. But if we want to deepen the relationship between ourselves, these teams, their work in the company, they need to have some co-creation. Can I co-create my social contract with my coworkers? So you can think about this as a working agreement, but it goes a little bit deeper than that. Like, can I get in with this team and become part of a team and co-create how we work together socially? And then my life. Can I co-create an experience that allows me to enrich my life while meeting the needs of the org? This is obviously sort of a wrap up phrase of everything that we've talked about before in this pyramid. I'm going to repeat it one more time. Can I co-create the experience that allows me to enrich my life while meeting the needs of the org? Because I absolutely believe, again, that everyone gets up wanting to do the best that they can, wanting to be engaged with the organization, wanting a relationship with their leaders. And there are so many things that we just don't talk about that are sort of underneath, under the surface of what's going on at work. And it is not as simple as just saying humans engage. When I was at Scrum Alliance, this is what we built the entire organization. I didn't know it at the time. I didn't have this model, but in my brain, like these were the things that we were trying to make possible at the company. I have certainly met other folks that have sort of varying levels of this, which is why I kind of based it on accessibility, because sometimes the leader themselves or leaders, it's not a choice that they don't do this, right? That they have external pressures or external reasons that they can't. But there are a couple others, but I do believe, and I am excited, that I think the pandemic forced some of this, and the Great Resignation is forcing this. And again, I think we're just coming to terms with it, but it has been building for years. This is not something that just like, oh, wow, there's a pandemic and now, all of these folks are gonna quit their jobs. Like, people have been asking for this. In some ways, it's where the manifesto came from, right? Like, people-centric organizations. And it may be something that is or is not in your control, but if you can bring this to the leaders that you work with and the teams that you work with, can I co-create an experience that allows me to enrich my life while meeting the needs of the org? And this model should help you do all of those things.